It was 4 or 5 months up there. I was surfing pretty much every day at Malibu, made hundreds of friends on the beach there. And it was late October. The wind had just got cold and the water was chilly. And I was pulling on my UGG boots that I'd brought from Australia. And, and I just had this dose of goosebumps like, oh my God, there are no sheepskin boots in America. And 1 in 2 Australians has some sort of sheepskin footwear. So I realized that America's population is 10 times as big as Australia's. God, I'm going to stay here and start importing. So that was really the aha moment that got the UGG branding this placement in all of these top TV shows. And then I'm looking at People magazine and so and so Cameron Diaz walking down Boulevard in tall sand UGG boots, and so it was really cool how Doug was able to piece that together. And my theme that you can't give birth to adults, right, which is the book. You had to start that. You couldn't. If I had $1 million and gave it to all the stars and said wear them, they'd just throw them aside. But by getting them in incrementally and birthing it in that really low-key way and then letting it grow into toddler and this. G'day, Ken. No, mate, what's your name?
Kenny.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing?
He's the author. He wanted to meet the guy who created UGG, see?
All right, hey.
This is the man. I told you you'd meet him today.
Good to meet you, Ken Jr. That's great.
Yeah, he has a lot of love for the Aussies.
Good deal.
We have
Hope to make it down there sometime.
Yeah, he lives in California and he was at Secret Knock. So
okay.
Yeah, he was at Secret Knock. He signed a bunch of books last year at Las Vegas, and not the one that you were at, but it's a good friend, Beth Robbins, says Carpe Diem. So it's about seizing the day, and continuing to seize the day when others wouldn't. And
that's right.
Those 5 years that you did, those were your 5 years of learning. I mean, it was
big time. I learned more in that period. Yeah.
And if someone else had started around the time you did, and you waited until you learned, it would have been too late. So
yeah. Speaking of.
Welcome to the Dr. Smiley Show. And I got to say, this man right here is going to bring so many smiles to your face. And I am so excited after all these years. And he said before the show, he says, well, it took us a while to get here, but Brian, it wasn't supposed to happen until today.
I guess right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, today is the day that I started my YouTube channel. So it's funny. I've got 50 shows and we're going to be loading them in. And I got a whole 13 subscribers. Brian, can you believe it?
Hey, the theme of my book, you can't give birth to adults, man. That you have to start at 13.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So I wanted to show everybody that this book was given to me many years ago, and he's given it to me several times, by the way, Brian, and I've given it to other people. So I just want to let you know I didn't hoard the 3 books.
Yep, that's great.
So I met you through Secret Knock. Dr. Craig Reed has brought you in, and I imagine you tout him as one of the people who's changed your life at some level.
He has, yes. I probably 10, 15 years ago, I published the book. I was starting a speaking sort of career, but I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And Greg had me come and speak on his stage, and I was able to take that and sort of build upon it and build what has become a really, really good and successful speaking, career. And I never thought about it beforehand, but speaking is a business, like, donuts and like, making clothing. The art of speaking is a real business, and you just have to learn all the tricks to get into it. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that theme that you can't give birth to adults means I got to start every project from a brand new perspective and wait till it goes through all of the stages.
So the birth of a brand has 2 meanings. It's brand new, and it's also what you do with the brand. Is that kind of a...
Well, yeah.
And I want to read this. I want to read the whole thing. Launching your entrepreneurial passion and soul, founder of UGG Australia. Now, is there a reason Australia has to be there, or is it because it's founded in Australia?
That was the brand up until the time I sold the company, was UGG Australia. And so we decided to use it there, but it's really just the founder of UGG.
Well, there's even proof on there on page 185. It even says original UGG Australia. So
yeah, that was one of our early logos. Yeah.
Well, we have quite a story to share with our audience, but before we do, I just want to say Keep Smiling has been translated into 42 languages through Barry Shore, who you've met, I believe.
Right,
And
right.
I helped extend that because I felt the Aussies were being left out a bit. So we came up with Keep Smiling, mate.
I love it.
So you are one of my favorite people, you and Frank Shankowitz. If I was to name two people that I just,
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
and so this is a very, I got to have Frank on, unfortunately, and he shared his beautiful story. I guess it was around Wishman. They should do a
Yeah.
movie about you, Brian.
Well, there's people who are looking into that, but I don't really need it for my ego's sake. It is a fun story. The book's a brilliant
Can
roadmap
I
for
tell you? Can I tell
entrepreneurs.
you why I said that though?
Okay, why?
I know you don't need it for your ego's sake. What I think is that you don't know how much inspiration you bring, and a movie would just have that much more reach to inspire.
I hope you're right, and I hope it comes to fruition. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about. You always had it easy, if I recall from your last stories. You never had a hard day in your life. Okay, so this beautiful book will tell the story, but it's what Brian's going to share with you. Brian Smith. He's going to share some of the best stories in here, but there's so many you'd be on the show for hours. So why don't you share where you were born, what your childhood was like, and maybe something in your childhood that caused you to be who you are today.
Yeah, I had a pretty average upbringing, probably better than average. My folks had a house at the coast. I lived in Canberra, 100 miles from the coast. So I had a city upbringing and a coastal beach upbringing at the same time. And when I got out of high school, I didn't know what to do. And I let my dad talk me into being an accountant, which I should never have done. I didn't really like the idea, but he was all about secure. Like he had a contracting company. I think he didn't want me to be an entrepreneur because
Mm.
how hard it is. So he put me into a safe, steady career. And it took me 10 years to graduate, and I quit the day I graduated. I just hated accounting. And so I came to America. I had this idea that all the big trends are coming out of California, like
Well,
Levi
before you
jeans.
go there, Brian, before you go there, you quit after 10 years. I mean, what'd your dad think of that?
He didn't have a choice. He could see I wasn't happy. He thought I was crazy. Going, especially when I came up with the idea of importing UGG boots. He just said, Brian, you're throwing your life away. You know, and I didn't understand his actions until many, many years later when I'd been through the mill of being an entrepreneur, and I would go, oh my God, he was just trying to protect me
Right.
from all the hard knocks of being in your own business.
Well, God bless him for trying, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I resonate with that, and it was 5 years into my medical illustration. I met some medical illustrators, and I said, this is too droll.
yeah.
This is not going to cut the mustard." So you got an idea? Tell me to pick it up. Sorry.
Yeah, so I came to California looking for the next big thing to bring to Australia. And it was 4 or 5 months up there. I was surfing pretty much every day at Malibu, made hundreds of friends on the beach there. And it was late October. The wind had just got cold and the water was chilly. And I was pulling on my UGG boots that I'd brought from Australia. And I just had this dose of goosebumps like, oh my God, there are no sheepskin boots in America, and 1 in 2 Australians has some sort of sheepskin footwear. So I realized that America's population is 10 times as big as Australia's. God, I'm going to stay here and start importing. So that was really the aha moment that got the UGG brand birthed, basically.
And it was all easy. I mean,
Oh,
everyone.
so
So you're going to go through
yeah,
trials and tribulations. I did find this one page here, so I know you're going to go into this at some point.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so why don't you share about your first wake up that this was not going to be as easy as you thought?
Yeah, well, Doug, my buddy, was going to be the salesman. With the two of us, were going to start a company, and he was the salesman. Went on the road, came back after about 3 weeks with about 150 business cards in an envelope for every shoe retailer that he talked to, every buyer. Not a single order. They just said, Brian, they tell me I'm crazy trying to sell sheepskin in California, you know. And on a surface level, that would appear correct. It's sunny in California, but it's incorrect in that Australia's climate's identical to Southern California. So it wasn't the product and it wasn't the weather, it was something else. They just didn't understand sheepskin. And so when we hit that wall where the retailers wouldn't touch us, I started thinking laterally, which every entrepreneur has to do. You have to kind of figure a way around the issue. And so I thought, oh my God, all my friends up at Malibu think this is the best idea in the world. And why? Oh, because they all been down to Australia on their surf trips and they bought a half a dozen pairs back for their buddies. So within the surfing community, UGG was really well known, and there were like 40 or 50 surf shops all the way up, from Malibu all the way down to Tijuana. And so Doug and I decided to go after the surf shops, and we did a first run where everybody said, "Oh man, this is the best idea in the world. Yeah, you're going to make so much money. You're so successful." Yeah. And this happened on every single surf shop where we took the samples, right? And we should have at the time asked for some orders. It might have changed the way we thought about it, but we
Yeah.
didn't need to. We were going to be multi-million dollars, in the first year anyway. So we ended up raising some money, bought 500 pairs in, and it was now December. It's time to go and ship the orders. So we went back on the road with all of our inventory in the order pads, and the very first store that I went to that before that told me I was going to be a millionaire said, "Well, yeah, you are, but we couldn't sell them in our store. We just sell surfboards and trunks and flip flops. You should go to the shoe stores." And that was the beginning of my disillusionment. Like every store was, well, yeah, you're fantastic. You're going to do great, but we couldn't sell them in our store. So the deposit slip for the first year's sales, it was just the month of December. The first year's sales of UGG was 28 pairs sold, right? And
That's you got a
we
little bit
bought
of
we bought 500 pairs in.
yeah. So you had a little bit of inventory left. Was it called UGG from the beginning?
Yes, it was, yeah.
How did that name come about?
Nobody really knows who invented it, but because Australia is a very sheep country, every little town in Australia has some person with a sewing machine and they make car seat covers or bed underlays or, whatever. And they also make sheepskin boots. And so one town would call it UG, and the next town would be UGH, and the next town would be UGGS. And, it was like nobody registered the brand down there since the 1940s
Hmm.
until about 1980, and everyone sort of jumped on the bandwagon and started registering names. But by then it was too late for Australia. It had become, in the general domain.
Gotcha. So you had a few extra, like 470. Well, 400. Yeah, about
Yeah,
470.
78, 478, 472. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a blessing though for you because if you had none left, you may have said, "Okay, I guess it's a bad idea," but you had to deal with it, right?
Yeah. Obviously, my buddy Doug and I realized we're not going to make any salaries out of this. So he went and got another job in the video industry, and I started going to swap meets and street fairs, and the best thing I had going for me was I had a Dodge van, and I'd fill up the back full of product, all the different sizes and colors, and every morning I'd go surfing at Malibu around 6:30, and I'd get my coffee around about 8 o'clock, and then I'd just stay in the parking spot all day, and I had after a while this incredible word of mouth customer base that they saw me in Redondo, saw somebody in Redondo Beach, well, where'd you get those? Oh, well, there's a guy in the Malibu parking lot, right? So it was like a pop-up store, 50 years
Right.
before pop-up stores became something. And so I ended up doing about $6,000 or $7,000 for January, February, March, and then I got a summer job. And the next year I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's because I didn't do any advertising. So I hired two models and posed them on the beach at Windansea in the perfect sunset and the perfect clothing and the perfect hair and the big tall white Ugg boots, the main part of the ad.
Right.
And I ran those ads for that season and the sales went to about 25,000, which was super disappointing. So I got another summer job and then I did the same thing the next year and the sales went to about 30,000. I mean, I'm thinking it should have been in the hundreds.
Right.
And and So the following summer job, I was working on a golf course, and I thought the thing through. And I thought, that I'm just going to get out of business. It's an expensive product. The retailers can't really afford to put it on their shelves. For
How expensive was it back then?
well, they were 70 or $80, which was, up against $15 for sandals.
Yeah.
And so it was a big event. And the other part was that they didn't understand, Americans don't understand sheepskin. They think it's soft and delicate and hot and prickly and, you can't get it wet, all that sort of stuff. But Australians know you just cannot even rip one. They're so tough. So anyway, the bottom line is I decided just to get out of the business. And then this October, after the summer, the first storm hits California, and you know what it's like here. When the first storm hits in October, everybody goes, "Oh, it's winter," right? So I got home from the golf course soaking wet, and there's about 20 messages on my answering machine. They're all this, Brian, I've had customers in the store all day asking for Uggs. I've run out. Can I come down and get some more? And 20 messages like that, and I'm realizing, shit, I can't even go out of business properly. It's so I ordered a couple more thousand from Australia and started delivering everything I had. But here was the big game changer. I know this is a bit of a long story, but this is the game changer in the story. I knew I needed to advertise, but I knew I was bombing. I didn't know what the hell was wrong. So I was having a beer with one of my surf shop retailers, and I was explaining this advertising, and he goes, "Shut up, Brian." And he calls out the back to these half a dozen little kids who store their surfboards in the back of the store. And he says, "What do you guys think of Uggs?" And every one of them said, "Oh man, those Uggs, they're so fake. Have you seen those ads? Those models, they can't surf."
Oh,
And
no.
instantly I realized I'm sending the wrong message to my target market. And when I saw my ads through their eyes, it was horribly embarrassing. They were so posed and fake and oh my God. Instantly I called a buddy of mine in Orange County who was running a scholastic surf team. I said, "Pete, got any young pros here who are going to go, young, amateurs that are going to go pro soon?" And he said, "Yeah, I got, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson." Anyway, I did a deal with these two guys and I paid them in Ugg boots to be, the spokespersons. And we went surfing at Trestles, which is San Onofre, and Black's Beach in La Jolla. And both of these walks are about a mile to get to the water. There's always fantastic surf. And I knew, or I hoped anyway, that every little kid who read Surfer magazine would recognize these two walks. So I just took photographs with my own camera, Mike and Ted walking to the beach and back from the beaches. And I selected a couple of photographs of them walking from the beach, from the surf, and I ran them. And the sales that year went to $220,000,
Mm.
right? Why? Because I'd figured out what advertising and marketing is all about. The ads that you run, doesn't matter if it's a print ad or a brochure or a website or an Instagram post, if you can get the reader into that photograph or that scene, and the more passion they can bring with it, the better the sales will be. But you have to make it real and make your target customer want to be in that ad. And when I figured that out, it was a piece of cake for me to transfer that to snowboarding and the ski market. And then a couple of years later, I was in back east in Boston, saying, well, shit, what do the kids do here in the winter for sport? And the guy rolls his eyes and said, well, they play hockey. And coming from Australia, I had no idea. But I did some research, and hockey's twice as big as the surf market. So we got into these youth hockey magazines in Minneapolis, and that covered the East Coast. And that was really, just understanding that you have to get your reader into the scene became the biggest breakthrough in the Uggs marketing history.
Boy, ads. And had you not done ads, you never would have found out.
Yeah, and I mean, not only was I wasting money, I was actually turning customers away because they were repulsed by my ads.
Yeah, but on the other side of it, Brian, if you no one's going to get it right the first time. I mean, you were able to find out why it wasn't working.
Yeah, luckily I was perceptive enough to hear those young kids.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then there was this there was another big thing that happened in your life with the UGG boots.
Oh, there were so many. Do you
Yeah,
want to give me
yeah, but I'm
more of
talking
that?
about the talk show. I'm talking about. I remember you telling the story about Oprah. That's why I was asking that part.
Oh, that was yeah, that was right at the tail end. I ran the company for 19 years, and the stories I just told you were the first 4 to 5 years,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So even though we'd started to make a dent in the marketplace, we were still unheard of in most of America. And so I was able to, I'll tell you another good story, how it sort of branched out, right? We were big in surf and ski and snowboarding and hockey, but we were all over the board. We had no real image, and I was wanting to get a casual comfort sort of image to promote the product with one big campaign, and I was sitting on an airplane coming home from somewhere to San Diego, and the girl next to me had Us magazine and People magazine, and she was reading through them. And I'm looking over her shoulder, and I'm seeing all these people walking down the streets of Hollywood, Cameron Diaz and Jennifer Lopez, and they're all wearing, clothes, and the caption underneath is she's wearing a top by so and so. And I thought, shit, how do I ever get into um, that scene?
Yeah.
And and I was talking to my buddy. This is about 10 or 12 years into the business, right? And I was talking to my buddy Doug, who was the guy on the beach with me when we decided to start the company, right?
Right.
And I said, Doug, how the hell I want to sort of do a campaign to get into this, the models. And he goes, oh shit, well, go to the stylists. And I said, what are stylists? He says, the makeup and the hairdo and the wardrobe, they all the movie studios have stylists. And so I found a list of all the stylists in Hollywood. There are about 400, sorry, 4,800 of them. And I sent an email out or a letter out to every one of them on a mailing list and said, hey, if you want a free pair of UGG boots, give me a call. And like 40 stylists called me up, and I delivered 40 pairs of boots for free. And it was really weird. But after about 3 months, I'm watching TV, and Brooke Shields is in some sitcom and she's wearing UGG boots,
No kidding.
and bit by bit it was all the way through to Tom Cruise in that Eyes Wide Shut movie. He's sitting there with his feet up on the table and a perfect shot of brown UGG boots. And so without me doing anything else except sending 40 pairs of boots out, I started getting this placement in all of these top TV shows. And then I'm looking at People magazine, and so and so Cameron Diaz walking down Boulevard in tall sand Ugg boots, and so it was really cool how Doug was able to piece that together. And my theme that you can't give birth to adults, right,
Mhm.
which is the book. You had to start that. You couldn't. If I had $1 million and gave it to all the stars and said wear them, they'd just throw them aside. But by getting them in incrementally and birthing it in that really low key way, and then letting it grow into toddler, and that's when all the models and all the cool people really wanted to get into it, but I wasn't giving them any free UGG boots anymore, right?
Well, I
So
have a question for you.
so
Do-
that sort of grew the brand.
oh, that grew the brand big time. But do you know what that mechanism's called? There's a name that is given to it. I have the book behind me. It's
Do
called
you really?
yeah, it's called tipping point.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So you created a tipping point.
I totally did. It took a long time, but that's what the birth to adult theme is all about. You
Yeah,
got
but
just
tipping points can take a long time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What was his name?
Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm
Malcolm.
Gladwell.
Yeah, I've read these books many times. Yeah,
Well, yeah, he talked about hush puppies and how that story took off. You know,
that's right.
I do my best shows, by the way. I just want to let you know I do my best shows when I'm wearing my UGG slippers.
I
Just
love it.
boy, do they get worn. I got to tell you, Brian. People are like, "How are your shows so good?" And I said, "If you knew what kind of slippers I'm wearing, you'd need that."
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how's the speaking business?
I love it. I love it. When I wrote my book, I had no idea that it would lead to speaking, right? But everybody kept saying, "Oh man, this is such fantastic knowledge. You've got to get out on the circuit and start talking to entrepreneurs." And so, I started, with Lions Club meetings and I did everything for free. I did maybe a year of talks,
Yeah,
every other month for free. And then
but you
somebody
sold books though, didn't you?
not really,
Not really.
a little bit. Everywhere I went, I had books with me, but and then eventually, a buddy of mine who owned a real estate company said, "Hey, come on in and speak to my sales force. I'll give you $500." So I that was my first paid gig, and I went into that, and everybody just loved the stories, like. Because I don't talk about all the big wins, like here I made millions of here and I made a great decision, I made a billion, none of that. It's all about the bullshit that I went through because of my bad decision making,
Right.
bad choices, ignorant choices, But each one of those lessons was a step forward in my knowledge and my ability to grow it and grow it. And it's like people think, your business starts here and goes straight to the top. Well, it doesn't. It hits a wall. You got to figure out a way around it, and then you're on another plateau. You hit another wall. And if you can keep overcoming the obstacles, eventually, and your competitors don't, eventually you're going to get more market share, more credibility, and more success. So that's what business is about. It's not a straight climb.
Well, I have a couple of compliments to give you, and I think my son has just gotten home pretty recently. But I want to say this about your book. Your book became the story of your brand, obviously, and you
Yeah.
are the brand talking about how you built a brand. I mean, it's a three-way piece,
It's really, really unique. Yeah.
and that's what makes the way you use this book the way you're supposed to use a book. You're supposed to use a book as a business card that says, "I know stuff that can tell stories that'll keep you entertained, but give you value on how you actually make a difference."
Yep. Yep. And that's why I've been successful on the speaking tour is that the people I love entrepreneurs, sales forces, branding companies, anywhere where they're trying to, maximize a brand because they get the stories that I'm talking about, right? And I've had people say, "Oh, I was about to give up my business, but now I understand I'm in the toddling stage, and now I see a future." Right? And I get all this. G'day, Ken.
And
No,
there's
mate, what's your name?
Kenny.
Hey,
yeah,
Kenny, how you doing?
he's the author. He wanted to meet the guy who created UGG. See, the
All
founder.
right. Hey,
This is the man. I told you you'd meet him today.
good to
So,
meet you,
but
Ken Jr. That's great.
yeah, he has a lot of love for the Aussies.
Good deal.
We have to
Hope
get
you
you all
make it
straight,
down
don't
there
we?
sometime.
Yeah, he lives in California, and he was at Secret Knock. So
Okay.
yeah, he was at Secret Knock. He signed a bunch of books last year at Las Vegas, and not the one that you were at,
Right.
but I just wanted him to come and meet you. That's why I planned the show at this time, so he could say hello to you.
Excellent. Well done, Ken.
All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
See ya.
So you had an I know I cut you off there, so sorry about that.
Yeah. I've lost my train of thought. We were talking about.
Well, we were talking about the brand and how you were getting the books and how you gave stories and value. I know that was part of what it was.
Yeah, yeah. But the book itself, oh, that's why it's like after one of my talks, let's say there's 100 people in the audience, because I talk from, 80 to 500, I've had thousands. So, but the small 100, member group are the ones I like because there's a lot of interaction afterwards, especially when I'm signing books.
Yeah.
And and they'll all tell me, "Oh my God, when you said that, it was just so true to me. I really use that for my life, for my business, whatever." And I'll have 10 people tell me 10 different things that they heard, and they probably didn't see the nine others
Isn't that something?
because today was just perfect for where they're at with this problem today. And I can't tell you, every single talk I do, I get, 10, 20 people tell me that it was just perfect for them at that time. And that's what the book is all about, is just bringing up all the situations from lack of financing all the way through to managing, sociopathic, funders that came in with the last money. I mean, it's just the whole gamut of being in business is like explored.
Well, I want to hear those two parts. I want to hear the Oprah and also the tail end of your stories. But I wanted to just say that you are bringing to the stage that it's okay to dream, but you got to fight for your dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And fight's a tough word. You just strive, I think, is a better word. Strive for your dream because it can be tough, but it can be a lot of fun at the same time. In
Sure.
fact, if I look back on the 19 years that I owned the business, the most fun was in the first 5 to 6 to 7 years where I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I mean, we were at the wrong trade shows. We were at the right place at the wrong time. It was like beating my head up against the wall. A classic story is when I was trying to get into the malls. Like I was really big in surf shops and sporting goods stores. I was trying to get into the malls, and I was in Chicago at Montgomery Ward's buying office. That was a big, big shoe department store at the time. And I gave my best sales pitch ever, and the buyer just sort of crossed his arms and looks back and says, "Brian, why are you here?" And I went, "Well, I want to get an order for the California stores." And he said, "Brian, don't you get it? We're the elephants. We don't move until the mice are running around under our feet, right?" Now, what he did in that comment, because I knew instantly what he meant, I'd seen myself as a horrible failure because I couldn't even get a pair of boots into Nordstrom or Kinney or Montgomery. But when he told me that, I realized, oh my God, I've got so much more work to do to get all these specialty stores just blowing out where the department stores start to see they're missing out on the business.
Right.
And that took me from abject failure mentality into, oh, wow, look at all the potential future I have, right? So that's what sticking around in business does. You just have these insights that can take you from the depths of despair suddenly with a whole new attack. Oh my God, it's going to be instant millionaire again. And then that bubble bursts, but that's the process, and it's fantastic.
Well, you are right that fight it was the wrong word, but it's a good friend Beth Robbins says carpe diem. So it's about seizing the day
Yeah,
and
yeah,
continuing to seize the day when others wouldn't. And
that's right.
those 5 years that you did, those were your 5 years of learning. I mean, it was your skill.
Big time. I learned more in that period. Yeah.
And if someone else had started around the time you did and you waited until you learned, it would have been too late. So,
Yeah. Speaking of that, when I started, there were two other companies starting their businesses. One was Nike, right? They've been importing these nylon running shoes. And for 5 or 6 years, because I read Phil Knight's book and
yes.
he listed his sales just like I do, the annual sales, right?
Right.
And he was around 5 or 6 years before the sport of jogging took off. And everyone sort of needed running shoes. And so they start scouring all the magazines and, oh, this Nike's been around for a while. Yeah, look at that. Yeah. So what I found out from his book is that as bad as my first 5 years sales were, we were bigger than the first 5 years sales of Nike.
And that's something.
Isn't that crazy? So they went through the birth to adult thing too. The other one was Reebok, and they were trying to get this little dance shoe into their market for nearly 10 years. They were out of England. And it wasn't until the sport of aerobics took off that everybody goes, well, where's the best, product for us? And it's, oh, Reebok, Reebok, Reebok. So they got into both of those companies went into the billions because of that societal shift, which had nothing to do, they didn't start jogging and they didn't start aerobics. That was outside of them, but
Right.
they were able to fulfill on the need that was required for footwear.
Well, the last two stories I'd love for you to share is one would be, and you can tell them in either order, but I'd love you to tell the Oprah how that just was.
Okay.
I love that, and then I'd like you to tell about how the UGG just changed and how you left it.
Sure, sure. Okay, well, the I always knew that this was going to be a worldwide brand, but I was, after 18 years, I pretty much got totally covered in the US. Like it was a national brand in the US, right? And for the last 4 or 5 years preceding that, I'd been sending all these boots out to, for this girl in London, and she gave me 20 friends, and I had to do 20 different customs invoices, right at the height of the shipping season. So I did it all myself, so my shipping staff didn't have to deal with it. But I was doing it for Trudy Styler, who's the wife of Sting. And we wanted to be part of that, because he was a very early user of Uggs, and we promoted that. And anyway, she called me up this Christmas and said, Brian, man, I've just been to a seminar. It's changed my world. I need the most perfect gift. Can you get me a pair of tall, whatever size, sand Uggs, and here's where to send them. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. She goes, Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey, right? And we sent a pair to Oprah, and she immediately, her staff called up and ordered 20 more pairs for her inner staff. And then, everyone in the company wanted to tell the world, right? But I just went, no, 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 no way. Because if we had have announced that Oprah was wearing Uggs at that time, there would have been this humongous rush
Yep.
for products. I didn't have the financing to build it. We didn't have the timing to build it. So it was right at that time that I was selling the company to Deckers Corporation, because it had got too big for me to really run it properly. And so with Deckers, they had like 30 million in the bank when I sold to them. And with all that sort of capital, we were able to stockpile a huge amount of UGG product. And then when we announced UGG, we were on Oprah's favorite things and Oprah's best picks for Christmas. And one of the Christmas show was 20 minutes, 25 minutes of nothing but UGG boots. And this is when Oprah was at her absolute peak of popularity. And we could not have paid in dollars for that. But that was UGG's societal shift. Remember how I mentioned Reebok and Nike? Well, UGG's societal shift was Oprah, and she put it out there to the world, and it just went into the hundreds of millions and the billions. And, that's the end of that story.
And then slippers were bought for podcasters.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah. But the last part of your question was, the the a lot of people say, do I regret selling? And the bottom line is I don't, because I don't have the character to run a public company. They wanted me to come in and be vice president of marketing. And I had this mentor. He said, Brian, you don't have a political bone in your body. You will be crucified, right? So I stayed on as a consultant for 2 years, and my job was really just to sort of streamline the Oprah deal and
Mhm.
make sure that we had that covered. Um, but when a company gets, where they were doing nearly 15 million at that time, you get people that come into the company, especially when you get new investors. These people will come in who don't really have the best interests of the company at heart. They have their own best interests to climb their way to the top and just kill anyone who's in their way. And I sensed this was happening. And we were looking at the following season being, a jump from 15 million to 25 million. And I knew I couldn't finance it. And I knew I didn't really want to be the guy doing that. So I found this guy, Doug Otto, and he, believe it or not, he had a spot at Malibu at the parking lot selling these sandals. They were pink, yellow, and pink neoprene. And he called them Deckers, triple Deckers. And he founded a company called Deckers Corporation and took on, the Tiva sandal brand. And he took that up to about 60 million and then went public. So that's how I knew he had 25, 30 million in the bank.
Right.
And when I saw him, we were going to the same trade show in Atlanta, and he was at the baggage claim way up the other end. And I got goosebumps again. And I thought, oh my God, there's my answer. Right. So I was able to go up and we high-fived each other and said, let's do it now. And we put the two companies together. And, that was the beginning of UGG taking, it got out of my hands, which, I was like the caretaker. And now I look at it as sort of walking my baby down the aisle and handing it off to a new husband. And now they can go out and conquer the world together. So I'm still the founder, I'm still father of the child, but really I don't have any responsibility for how they turn out anymore.
Well, it's beautiful stories, and certainly you belong on the stage. You're a prophet now.
Thank you.
That's the thing that's so important, Brian, is that you created these beautiful stories and no one would have ever heard them, and so that was your next calling.
Yeah. Well, I love the speaking aspect of it. I'm getting ready to do a six-city tour in Australia in 10 days. That's going to be a bit of a tough assignment, but
Oh my gosh, you're going. How often do you go to Australia?
I haven't been since COVID started. I was in the departure lounge in LAX and I heard that Australia just closed the border. Anyone arriving after midnight was 24 hours in quarantine. So I got my bag off the plane and went home.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, I tell you, there was a, I know in Maryland, we bought millions of those Uggs when we heard the tariffs were going to go up in Australia. So we bought millions of them.
Really
Yeah, I mean, you got to.
crazy.
All right. Well, I want to go to Australia with you. I'll tell you that. That's a
That'd be a fun trip. Yeah.
so. What would you recommend as the best places to go in Australia?
I would stick from Brisbane down through to Sydney and the south coast. It's just extraordinary,
Yeah,
really beautiful.
and yeah, and the water. My gosh, the coral
Yeah,
reef, the coral reef.
very. The water doesn't have any color. It's just you can see through it for ages.
I know, and it's the largest coral reef in the world.
The north, yeah, northeast it is. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah, so beautiful to have you on. Thank you for all the times you've given me a book, but more importantly, thank you for all the laughs and the smiles. How can people connect with you? How can they hire you to speak at their event?
Sure. My website site is briansmithspeaker.com.
I
Pretty
wonder how you
simple.
came up with that. That's
Yeah, pretty original,
okay.
right? briansmithspeaker.com. And there's a link in the website, also the end of my book, which is available on Amazon. Also, the Audible version is on Amazon as well. But either way, get to me and just make an inquiry, and we'll see if I'm available and if your group fits what I talk about.
Do you make it out to the East Coast at all? The DC, Maryland, Virginia.
I have done, and yeah, I speak to entrepreneurial organization a lot. And they've got tons of chapters, but there's a lot in the East Coast that I haven't been to yet. So,
Well, I'm telling you, we had so many people over here trying to learn Australian, so we can be ready for you.
all right, it's a tough job.
Well, I
But
love you, Brian. You're awesome.
thanks.
You embrace this so much, and I'm always happy to see you. Oh, the big 20 years next year, Secret Knock.
Yeah, I know it's a really big deal.
That's going to be a huge reunion.
Yep,
I'm going to say this. I want first hugs. Okay, just tell people the guy who's got the Uggs on the podcast. He's first in line for the hug. The
you
hug.
got
Yeah.
it, buddy. Okay, Ken. I'll
Right.
see you when I see you there.
Thank you, Brian. Have a great day.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'll
That
save
went
the
really.
recording if you want it.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be really good. Yeah.
And so you picked a very interesting, like, I didn't have this as organized as I do now. I did my 5 years on the podcast with Voice America. So I'll just tell you the 1 minute. I'm spending about $30,000 to do this justice to the people like yourself that I really care about. So today we did the Facebook Live, and we're doing the Zoom record. The Zoom record gets sent to my people in Pakistan. They chop it up and they put it onto social channels.
Right.
Eventually goes to YouTube. But I just want to show you my social channels have dramatically gone up because we're doing it the right way. So I got 11,000 people following me. But more importantly, I have 155,000 active views. Just this month. 155,000.
Can you talk in music for me? I've just hired a guy he's actually works from Bali, but he's got a team up in the Philippines, I think.
Yep.
And they're in the process of they've just done 10 um, videos and then a little list of to-dos afterwards. And I'm having a meeting on Thursday to go over them and give them the green light to start publishing it. So
Good.
right now I've probably got two Instagram followers, my girlfriend and my daughter who've created it.
Well, let's go to three.
Okay.
And
It's
by the way, I'll help you grow it. I mean, I actually have gotten pretty good at this stuff.
okay.
Your timing and being on the show is so good because we just launched the YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So
Yeah.
what is it? Brian Smith speaker?
At Brian Smith.
Just Brian Smith? You got the
Yeah.
Smith, huh?
No, Brian Smith UGG. Brian Smith UGG.
I got you. So guess what? You're doing pretty good. You got 8,000.
Oh my God, I didn't know I had any.
Well, I'm following you. If you feel the right the if you feel inspired, follow back.
I'll do that. I'm not sure how, but I'll do that for sure.
Well, I'm going to show you how because you should do that. You should learn this. When you have followers, they'll show up at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you are following you, when you follow them back, it'll say follow back. So there's certain
Okay.
people you may want to follow back. But there was one other thing I want to tell you. Oh yeah. Have you ever heard this or thought this? I'm like a tag. I'm a slogan guy. I'm a title guy.
Yeah.
I come up with really good hooks.
Yep.
I'm just curious. Has anyone ever said Brian Smith puts the UGG in hug?
No. I like it though.
Yeah, it's good. It brings your brand, but it brings your heart.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'll check it out with my team. Yeah.
Yeah, check it out with your team, and I'll tell you, Barry Shore is my mentor, the 65-year-old. I'm 75 now, but he's the one who gave me the first Key Smiling card. But here's what I want to share with you. Do you know what he says? Hug stands for
No.
heartfelt, unlimited giving.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
And so if you take the H off, it's unlimited giving. Is what.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down.
Well, I'm gonna text it to you in case you forget it, and
Okay.
because I think I'm really good with this stuff. So if you ever need help with anything, I'm happy to help you. You're my brother.
I feel the same way, Ken.
And I'm glad we didn't do the show before this day.
Yeah, I think logistically it's perfect.
I, I think in the background of my mind, I said, I don't want Brian on until I have this really tight, and it's tight now.
Wow, that's lucky. And I totally agree that there's some force in the universe that works that way. And this is a really obvious example of it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll send you it'll be about 2 days. I'll send you the show. All right.
Thanks, bud. Love
Thanks.
you.
Take care. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye bye.